boys and girls. Welcome to the Tale of Despereaux. We're going to start with Chapter 2. Real quick for anybody who did not listen to Chapter 1. In the beginning of the story, a mouse is born in a castle. The mouse does not seem to be well. However, it turns out that the mouse does survive, and this is the mouse's story. Chapter 2, Such a Disappointment. Despereaux Tilling lived, but his existence was cause for much speculation in the mouse community. "He's the smallest mouse I've ever seen," said his Aunt Florence. "It's ridiculous. No mouse has ever been this small. Not even a Tilling." She looked at Despereaux through narrowed eyes as if she expected him to disappear entirely. "No mouse," she said again, "ever." Despereaux, his tail wrapped around his feet, stared back at her. "Those are some big ears he's got too," observed his Uncle Alfred. "They look more like donkey ears if you ask me." "They are large ears," said Aunt Florence. Despereaux wiggled his ears. His Aunt Florence gasped. "They say he was born with his eyes open," whispered Uncle Alfred. Despereaux stared hard at his uncle. "Impossible," said Aunt Florence. "No mouse, no matter how small or large-eared, is ever born with his eyes open. It simply isn't done." "His pa, Lester, says he's not well," said Uncle Alfred. Despereaux sneezed. He said nothing in defense of himself. How could he? Everything his aunt and uncle said was true. He was ridiculously small. His ears were super large. He had been born with his eyes open, and he was sickly. He coughed and sneezed so often that he carried a handkerchief in one paw at all times. He ran temperatures. He fainted at loud noises. Most alarming of all, he showed no interest in the things a mouse should show interest in. He did not think constantly of food. He was not intent on tracking down every crumb. With his larger, older siblings, while his larger, older siblings ate, Despereaux stood with his head cocked to the side, holding very still. "Do you hear that sweet, sweet sound?" he said. "I hear the sound of cake crumbs falling out of people's mouths and hitting the floor," said his brother to Lise. "That's what I hear." "No," said Despereaux. "It's something else. It sounds like, honey." "You might have big ears," said Lise, "but they're not attached right to your brain. You don't hear honey. You smell honey. When there's honey to smell, which there isn't." "Son," barked Despereaux's father, "snap to it. Get your head out of the clouds and go hunt for those crumbs." "Please," said his mother, "look for the crumbs. Eat them to make your mamma happy. You are such the skinny mouse. You are a disappointment to your mamma." "I'm sorry," said Despereaux. He lowered his head and sniffed the castle floor. But, reader, he was not smelling. He was listening with his big ears to the sweet sound that no other mouse seemed to hear. We'll read one more chapter. Chapter 3, Once Upon a Time. Despereaux's siblings tried to educate him in the ways of being a mouse. His brother Furlough took him on a tour of the castle to demonstrate the art of scurrying. "Move side to side," instructed Furlough, scrabbling across the waxed castle floor. "Look over your shoulder all the time, first to the right, then to the left. Don't stop for anything." But Despereaux wasn't listening to Furlough. He was staring at the light pouring in through the stained glass windows of the castle. He stood on his hind legs and held his handkerchief over his heart and stared up, up, up into the brilliant light. "Furlough," he said, "what is this thing? What are all those colors? Are we in heaven?" "Cripes," said Furlough from far corner. "Don't stand there in the middle of the floor talking about heaven. Move! You're a mouse, not a man. You've got to scurry." "What?" said Despereaux, still staring at the light. But Furlough was gone. He had, like a good mouse, disappeared into a hole in the molding. Despereaux's sister Merlot took him into the castle library, where light came streaming in through tall, high windows and landed on the floor in bright yellow patches. "Here," said Merlot, "follow me, small brother, and I will instruct you on the fine points of how to nibble paper." Merlot scurried up a chair, and from there he hopped onto a table on which there was a huge open book. "This way, small brother," she said as she crawled onto the pages of the book, and Despereaux followed her from the chair to the table to the page. "Now then," said Merlot, "this glue here is tasty, and the paper edges are crunchy and yummy, like so." She nibbled the edge of a page and then looked over at Despereaux. "You try," she said. "First a bite of some glue, and then follow it with a crunch of the paper. And these squiggles, they are very tasty too." Despereaux looked down at the book, and something remarkable happened. The marks on the pages, the squiggles as Merlot referred to them, arranged themselves into shapes. The shapes arranged themselves into words, and the words spelled out a delicious and wonderful phrase: "Once upon a time." "Once upon a time?" whispered Despereaux. "What?" said Merlot. Oh, nothing," said Despereaux. "Eat," said Merlot. "I couldn't possibly," said Despereaux, backing away from the book. "Why?" Said Despereaux. "It would ruin the story." "The story? What story?" Merlot stared at him. A piece of paper trembled at the end of one of her indignant whiskers. "It's just like Pa said when you were born. Something is just not right with you." She turned and scurried. What did she do? She turned and scurried from the library to tell her parents about this latest disappointment with Despereaux. Despereaux waited until she was gone, and then he reached out, and with one paw he touched the lovely words, "Once upon a time." He shivered, he sneezed, he blew his nose into his handkerchief. "Once upon a time," he said aloud, relishing in the sound, and then, tracing each word with his paw, he read the story of a beautiful princess and the brave knight who serves and honors her. Despereaux did not know it, but he would need very soon to be brave himself. Have I mentioned that beneath the castle there was a dungeon? And in the dungeon there were rats, large rats, mean rats. Despereaux was destined to meet those rats. Reader, you must know that an interesting fate awaits almost everyone, mouse or man, who does not conform. I'm not sure what that means, but we'll find out as we read. Here is a picture of the book that Merlot showed to Despereaux. And on the book, you can see the words "Once upon a time," just vaguely. All right, dear readers, that is the end of chapter 3, and we will move on to chapter 4 another day. I'm going to put my trusty little sticky tab right here so I can open up to the right page. I hope you enjoyed that story, and I hope you're enjoying your Friday. Thank you.